This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
At least 60 people killed after a boat capsized in the Democratic Republic of Congo. France says it has no immediate plans to reduce its military presence in the Sahel region. And the World Health Organization alerts 6 African countries about potential Ebola outbreaks. Welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. I'll bring you the details of those stories in just a moment, but first, here's Ramanyang with the day's business headlines. Rama.
That's right, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. The cryptocurrency Bitcoin has surged to yet another all-time record of $50,000 for the first time in its history. And e-commerce is booming in South Africa as shoppers go online amidst lockdown measures. We'll have the details on those stories and lots more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. Well, at least 60 people have died following a boat accident in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Authorities have confirmed that a boat carrying over 700 people capsized on the Congo River. The accident took place in the Nairobi province, located in the country's west. Around 300 survivors have so far been found, with over 200 missing. Earlier, we spoke with Chris Ochamriga to better understand why boat accidents are common in the DRC and what authorities are doing to tackle the issue. Here's what he had to say.
Well, boat accidents are really common. Last month, there was an accident on the Congo River where 70 people died. And it was a similar case of overloading. That's one of the biggest problems in the DRC. Overloading, non-compliance with navigation standards, and the poor condition of these vessels. Now, the DRC government has passed some laws that are supposed to ensure the safety of passengers who are traveling by boat in the DRC. But those laws are not enforced and are not followed by the people. For example, they have banned boat owners from traveling at night. But this accident that happened in Nairobi province was a boat that was traveling at night. And so that means that the people who are supposed to enforce these measures are not doing their job. There have been reports that some of them receive bribes from some of the boat owners and allow people to travel. There's also another condition that all the passengers on these boats are supposed to have life jackets. But many of them, like in this latest case, did not have life jackets and they don't know how to swim. So when the boat capsizes, people die. And that is the problem that this country is facing so far. The president has said that they're going to step up measures to ensure that people do not continue dying, but it's still a challenge for the country.
French President Emmanuel Macron has announced that France has no immediate plans to adjust its military presence in the Sahel region. He made the comments after a G5 summit being held in Chad's capital N'Djamena. Chad is set to announce plans to deploy 1,000 troops. They will be based on the border along Niger, Burkina Faso and Mali. The rise in jihadist insurgency in Mali was among the topics of the N'Djamena summit. It is also focused on economic development of areas once controlled by militants. President Macron also called for more aid to be given to the G5 task force.
We have put up a trust fund and we have identified the need for 40 million euros per year to make this force function, to pay for the bonuses and its operations. We must now continue to solicit all of our international partners to give a visibility to our joint forces and obtain long-term financing.
Indeed, France's military presence in the Sahel has had an impact on the region. To better understand this and the potential impact of President Macron's announcement, CGTN's Wilkis Tanyabwa filed this report.
France's pronouncement that it has no intention of making changes to its deployment in the Sahel region came at a timely moment. This year's G5 summit took place a year after France boosted the number of troops it had deployed to help stabilize the Sahel region. Mali, Chad, Niger, Burkina Faso and Mauritania make up the Sahel countries, and all have suffered escalating attacks from insurgents. Leaders of the G5 Sahel attended a two-day summit in the Chadian capital, N'Djamena, with French President Emmanuel Macron joining in by video link. The Sahel region, a semi-arid stretch of land just south of the Sahara Desert, has been a front line in the war against Islamist militancy for over a decade. In 2020, France increased troop numbers in the Sahel from 4,500 to 5,100 soldiers, a move that led to several military successes. But despite this, jihadists remain in control of some areas and the attacks continue. Now French President Emmanuel Macron says that any changes that France makes will depend on other countries contributing troops.
There was a period where, although the French military were staging a series of successful attacks and they were killing or capturing some very prominent jihadist figures and securing, if you like, victories in the very narrow military sense of the term, the violence was still continuing, the crisis was continuing, so that you could say that individual tactical victories were not producing an improved security situation overall. But in the last year, since the previous crucial summit in January in France, and the French and the Sahelian militaries have coordinated a very effective campaign, and they've now been joined by some European special forces as well from a number of European countries. And they do seem to have made significant military progress in tackling that group.
But this decision may not be welcomed by all. A poll conducted in early January 2021 by the French Institute of Public Opinion also revealed that 51% of France's population no longer supports the military intervention in the Sahel. The results of the poll also showed the collective fatigue of French citizens towards the military operation.
Despite the ongoing jihadist attacks, the French military do believe that particularly what's been carried out over the last year or so, has really produced results. And so they have felt that if the campaign can be sustained, and if they can get support from European allies and from a reinforcement of the G5 Sahel countries' military effectiveness. Obviously, they're putting a big effort in, but as their troops become more experienced, then the question is, can they be more effective?
Islamist fighters in the Sahel first emerged in northern Mali in 2012 during a rebellion by ethnic Tuareg separatists, which was later taken over by the jihadists. According to the UN, thousands of soldiers and civilians have been killed, while more than 2 million people have fled their homes. In 2019 alone, 4,000 people were killed in the region, and the attacks are escalating. Local militias have also joined in. African countries are now mulling other ways to approach the conflict. Burkina Faso's Prime Minister has said the country is considering holding peace negotiations with the armed groups. Former Malian President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta also initiated similar negotiations. Analysts, however, say it is important to tackle poor governance, poverty and porous borders. The big worry is that if left unchecked, the crisis could spread further across West Africa. CGTN.
Well, French President Emmanuel Macron has announced that France has no immediate plans to adjust its military presence in the Sahel region. Well, CGTN's Ross Cullen is in Paris for us. He's joining us live with more on the summit. Ross, President Macron has announced that there is no immediate change to the French military presence in Africa's Sahel. What more do you know? What can you tell us?
Well, we had been expecting a possible announcement from the French president on this planned timeline for a drawdown of French troops. Last year, 600 extra French military personnel were deployed to the region, but President Macron saying that they are going to be remaining for now. He said that it would be paradoxical to weaken our deployment at a time when political and military alignment is enabling us to reach our goals. France has a total military complement in the Sahel region of 5,100 troops, along with combat fighter jets, armoured personnel carriers and helicopters as well. But there is that possibility that later on this year that could come up again. The verb that he used and that you said as well, Beatrice, adjust, which most people have taken to mean reduce. He said we want to adjust our military presence, but he didn't announce it at this Sahel summit. He might well do so further down the line, because there is that pressure, as we heard in the report, on the French president from the public, which is the growing pressure, the growing discontent here over France's continued military engagement with the Sahel region.
But Ross, there has been a call, though, for more aid for Sahel forces. What has been the reaction from partners on this?
More aid, that was something else that Emmanuel Macron touched on, saying that we need to be supporting the communities in the affected countries as well. And we did see other moves from the European Union. We know that there's already been engagement from the United States as well, and other African nations. The African Union spoke as well, as did representatives from Ecommerce as well, about the need for better basic governance, making sure that communities have the support they need when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to sanitation, food and clean water, and education as well. We have seen action from other states as when it comes to G5 movements. Chad last year said it would be deploying 1,200 extra troops to this particular area of focus, that tri-border region between Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso. It delayed that deployment in January 2020, but has now said it is ready to go ahead and send those troops to the area. And we also had the announcement of this secretariat for the coalition of the Sahel, which is going to be a kind of political forum, allowing for greater legal advocacy, allowing for greater high-level political dialogue. There's going to be commissioners and high representatives working under that umbrella framework of the secretariat, hoping to be able to move the conversation on when it comes to political and legal matters. Of course, that is something that is important as well for other countries looking for other ways out of this, and hoping that the military solution won't be the only solution.
All right, Ross Cullen joining us there from Paris. Thank you. Let's now head to Guinea, where one more person has died following the country's new Ebola outbreak. The total death toll from the disease now stands at 5. The government has launched an urgent contact tracing exercise after the disease's latest resurgence. Through its Twitter page, the United Nations says that the first flight carrying experts and sanitary equipment has arrived in the affected region. Guinea's Prime Minister Ibrahima Kassori Fofana says that the West African nation has set up structures to deal with the Ebola epidemic. This latest Ebola outbreak saw the first case of the disease to be reported in West Africa in 5 years. Well, I'm now joined by Georges Kizebo, the World Health Organization's representative in Guinea, for more on that outbreak. Thank you for joining us on the program. What is the latest on the Ebola outbreak in Guinea? Give us an update.
Yes, the investigation following the declaration by the government is ongoing on the field. So the teams have been looking for contacts of the first cases and isolating suspected cases, and also putting in place means to respond to a broader area, including looking at cross-border issues with neighboring countries. So the investigation is going on, and more support is being sought from the regional office of WHO based in Brazzaville and the WHO headquarters. We are working together with UN partners and NGOs, also having deployed teams on the field.
So many, of course, do remember the Ebola outbreak of 2014 in parts of West Africa, and there still remains some concern as a result of that. Could you give us a clearer indication of the reaction this time around from partners from the World Health Organization, together with the government response to this latest outbreak?
I think based on the lessons learned from the latest outbreak, but also outbreaks that happened in DRC, since 2018, the response has been quicker and also stronger based on teams that were already in the field and also teams responding to the COVID-19. So this has been an advantage to be more reactive, more proactive, and also new innovations are being looked at, including rapid diagnostic tests and new therapeutics and even vaccines. So this makes a difference, even though anxiety is there in the community and the complexity of having to respond to Ebola and COVID at the same time is very huge.
So talk to us about that vaccine that you have mentioned. Talk to us about the plans that are there for the vaccine rollout and when exactly that can be expected, if at all.
Yes, the vaccine has been ordered by the WHO headquarters. The government has given authorizations for the use of the vaccine. And as soon as the vaccine arrives in the country, by the end of this week, the teams will be ready to be deployed and start the ring vaccination, meaning vaccination of contacts and suspected individuals in the community to try and contain the outbreak as much as possible.
All right, Georges Kizebo joining us there from Guinea. Thank you. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has alerted 6 countries to watch out for potential Ebola cases after fresh outbreaks in Guinea and the Democratic Republic of Congo. CGTN's Wilkista Nyabwa tells us more.
Guinea declared a new outbreak on Sunday in the first resurgence of the disease there since the 2013 to 2016 outbreak. The Democratic Republic of Congo reported a resurgence of the virus on the 7th of February. Now the World Health Organization is asking 6 countries to be vigilant.
So we have already alerted the 6 countries around, including, of course, Sierra Leone and Liberia, and they are moving very fast to prepare and be ready and to look for any potential cases.
The WHO has, however, not specified the other countries. Health authorities have identified close to 300 Ebola contacts in the Congo outbreak and around 109 in Guinea. Gene sequencing of Ebola samples from both Congo and Guinea is also underway to enable scientists to learn more about the origins of new outbreaks and identify the strains.
How come we've got another outbreak since they declared the end 2020? We have found, again, once you have had an Ebola outbreak, it is likely that it will recur. We've seen several outbreaks in Mandaka, in Equateur. Now, we don't know if this is down to Ebola persisting in the human population or if it's simply moving again from the animal population, but the genetic sequencing that's ongoing will help us with that information.
Guinea was one of the 3 most affected countries in the 2013 to 2016 West Africa Ebola outbreak, the largest since the virus was first discovered in 1976. During that outbreak, there were 28,000 cases, including 11,000 deaths. The outbreak started in Guinea and then moved across land borders to Sierra Leone and Liberia. Wilkista Nyabwa, CGTN.
Let's now turn to the Central African Republic. 2 alleged former militia leaders have appeared before the Hague-based International Criminal Court. Among them is Patrice Edouard Ngaisson. He was the head of the country's football federation. Ashta Tal has more.
Patrice Edouard Ngaisson and Alfred Yakatom both held positions of leadership in the Central African Republic. Ngaisson led the CAR's football federation, served briefly as sports minister before being elected to the Confederation of African Football. Yakatom was elected as an MP in 2016. Standing in The Hague, they are now facing charges for their alleged involvement in the country's 2013 to 2014 civil war. As a court read out their charges, the men responded to the allegations.
Yes, I have understood everything that's been said here, and I categorically say that these counts are not correct. I reject all the charges that you have laid against me.
Mr. President, I repeat, I don't recognize myself in the charges brought against me. I am not guilty.
Prosecutors, however, allege that both men held leadership positions in the so-called anti-Balaka militias. The Christian-dominated militias formed to fight against Muslim-dominated militias, known as Seleka. The Seleka seized power through a coup in 2013. The anti-Balaka militias, however, allegedly also targeted the country's Muslim population in their attacks.
As the evidence will show, Ngaisona's participation in this strategy was integral, and he contributed to it fully aware that the group he was helping to structure, arm, finance, instruct, and organize, known by September 2013 as the Anti-Balaka, would inevitably target the Muslim civilian population in Western CAR. He knew the vengeance within them, and he knew that they intended to and would commit the multiple acts and crimes constituting the widespread and systematic attack that took place from September 2013 through December 2014.
Negason faces charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity. They include murder, rape, persecution, and torture. Yekatom, an alleged former militia commander, faces the additional charge of recruiting child soldiers. Astatal, CGTN.
You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead on the program. The World Health Organization lists 2 additional COVID-19 vaccines for emergency use and COVAX rollout. And the number of Nigerian doctors infected with COVID-19 continues to rise. We have a report on that.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo, Juba, Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The World Health Organization has listed 2 versions of the AstraZeneca Oxford COVID-19 vaccine for emergency use, giving the green light for these vaccines to be rolled out globally to the COVAX initiative. The vaccine was reviewed by the body's strategic advisory group of experts on immunization, thus recommending it for all age groups above 18. The vaccines are produced by the Republic of Korea and the Serum Institute of India. The AstraZeneca Oxford product is a viral vectored vaccine and has been found to have 63% efficacy. It is suitable for low and middle income countries due to its easy storage requirements.
Today is a great day, especially for the COVAX. We started assessing these 2 vaccines hardly 4 weeks ago. But when you look at the map that has been shown on this in various fora, where you have continents that have access to vaccines and then other continents that don't have, I think any movement that increases capacity on the manufacturing and supply of vaccine is a great milestone for this country, for this world. If we are going to be safe, as the Director General says, nobody will be safe unless everybody is safe. And today's announcement of 2 vaccines, versions of AstraZeneca, allows everybody to access vaccines.
Well, COVID-19 cases and deaths are surging in Africa as new, more contagious variants of the virus spread to more countries. So what are these variants and what do scientists know about them? Here's CGTN's Enoch Sikolia.
Well, all viruses, including the COVID-19 one, undergo mutation, forming new versions called variants. The genetic changes happen when the virus makes copies of itself as it tries to spread and thrive. Most of them are insignificant. A few can be harmful to the virus survival, but some variants can be more infectious to the host, humans. The question has been, are the variants more dangerous? Now, according to scientists, there seems to be no evidence the South African variant causes more illness for most patients. The concern, however, is that it can spread much faster. It has been established that this variant carries a mutation that makes it more contagious. The biggest concern now is whether the mutation affects the effectiveness of the vaccines. Scientists say it's too soon to tell. Pfizer's vaccine has been tested against the UK and South African mutations and appeared to work. According to scientists, the vaccine was only slightly less effective.
Meanwhile, the Association of Resident Doctors in Nigeria estimates that some 70% of Nigerian doctors in clinical practice could be infected with COVID-19. It links the surge in those cases to several factors, including insufficient protective gear for health workers, inadequate infrastructure, and patients failing to disclose their health status. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam reports.
The COVID-19 pandemic continues to take its toll on Nigeria's health sector as infections among health workers increase at an alarming rate.
About 70% of doctors should have been infected by now. That's an estimate and that is a theory. And we believe that it could be even more than that.
And the Resident Doctors Association blames this on the lack of enough personal protective gears for health workers in some treatment facilities.
The government and the management are not proactive enough. In some of the hospitals, you see a doctor using a face mask for 2 days. Is that nice? You don't even have hand gloves to see your patient with. You write hand gloves for the patient. It's as bad as that patients pay for their treatment when they are infected with COVID-19 now. The number one reason that accounts for high rate of infection among doctors is the fact that patients walk into the hospital and lie about their symptoms.
Dr. Isaac Akerele has been working in the front line since the outbreak of the pandemic. He has lost a number of his colleagues to the virus, while several others have quit their jobs. This is despite the shortage of medics in the country, given Nigeria's ratio of 1 doctor to over 4,000 patients.
We are fewer of us to cater for the surge of patients trooping to the hospital. The fewer health care workers that are available, I do what? We have to work overtime, do extra work, do extra procedure. In front of it, they are not susceptible to be infected. Improper use of PPE have been found, even amongst us, to be responsible for this.
A lot of doctors die trying to make things work in the health sector. Nobody remembers them. So how will I now want to sacrifice my own life when I saw my mate who died last year? His wife are suffering, the kids are not going to school. How will I want to risk my life?
Nigerian health workers are among the lowest paid in the world. Hazard allowance is at an average $160 per annum, and doctors have in the past lamented over unpaid salaries and allowances. Nigeria has experienced a brain drain in the health sector. Some health workers have taken up better job offers overseas. Experts have warned that if the issues aren't addressed speedily, the situation could snowball into a major public health crisis. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Egypt has recorded a drop in the number of daily COVID-19 cases compared to those registered at the end of the year 2020. However, the country's health minister has warned of the possibility of a third wave of coronavirus infections by April if Egyptians do not observe restrictions. The North African country is rolling out its vaccination campaign, which has so far only seen frontline medics inoculated. Yasser Hakim has more from Cairo.
Dr. Samia Girgis is the infection control manager at Cairo's Ain Shams University hospitals and deals with COVID-19 patients directly. She was inoculated with China's Sinopharm vaccine last week.
I was one of the first to be vaccinated. It was simple. I felt nothing afterwards. Some people might have a minor sore in the arm for a day. Others may be a small fever for a day like any vaccine, but most people felt nothing at all.
By the end of January, more than 350 frontline doctors in Egypt had lost their lives to the pandemic. Dr. Girgis says the vaccine helps her feel a bit more secure at work.
If I take a shot today, for example, I will begin to have the immunity cells after 14 days. And then the second shot is for stronger immunity, which of course will make me feel protected when treating patients.
Even before the vaccinations, Dr. Girgis noted a drop in the number of patients checking in at hospitals. Official figures show an average of 600 coronavirus cases are confirmed daily. That's half the number recorded during the second wave reported in the last quarter of 2020.
It's because of the health measures implemented effectively everywhere by the government, alongside improved awareness by many citizens who avoid crowded gatherings or closed areas. The government has also adopted rigorous measures in public and private enterprises like asking people to work from home, wearing masks at work and maintaining social distancing regularly.
Egypt has purchased 120 million doses of vaccines from China, Russia and the WHO. But the slow pace of deliveries has prompted the government to seek approvals to manufacture the jabs locally.
The Ministry of Health is preparing the production lines at the state-owned Vexera company. Delegations from China and the WHO have visited the plant and evaluated the restructuring process for manufacturing. Production is set to begin in the last quarter of 2021.
There are now fewer coronavirus cases being reported across Egypt. This has led to increased optimism that once vaccines are rolled out to the masses, they could help achieve a quick containment of the spread of the coronavirus. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Police in Myanmar have filed new charges against ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Her lawyer says she's accused of violating the Natural Disaster Management Law. In its first news conference since it seized power on February the 1st, the military defended its removal of the elected government, alleging fraud in elections in November. A military spokesman says Suu Kyi is in good health. Meanwhile, protesters continue to take to the streets. Anti-military demonstrators blocked the railway in the country's biggest city, Yangon, today. Dave Grunewald has more.
We don't have a lot of specifics on why she's being charged, an additional charge with violating this natural disaster law. She was already facing a charge on violating the import-export law over walkie-talkies. Now, Aung San Suu Kyi met with a judge on video call. Her own attorneys were not allowed to join in on this, and her attorney said that her next court hearing will be March 1st. Now, the military denies accusations it's getting help from China building an internet firewall. The military claims protesters are pressuring civil servants to not work, and they said some of the protesters are violent. They did not address their own use of force by their own security forces, though. A lot of the same talking points that they've been saying since the military takeover on February 1st. They're saying there was election fraud in November, that the election problems they raised were not addressed, and that's why they staged this military takeover. They did say they will hold an election, but they still have not given a date.
Rama Nyang is here now with the latest business news. Rama.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Here's what's coming up in business. Bitcoin has surged to an all-time high, over $50,000 for the first time in its history. And e-commerce is booming in South Africa as shoppers go online amid pandemic restrictions.
This has taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Let's start in the world of cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin continues its blistering rally today, surging to an all-time high of over $50,500. Now, the world's largest and oldest digital currency by market value rose by over 3% earlier today to hit that level. It did fall back later under the $50,000 mark. In dollar terms, Bitcoin's value has gone up by 70% so far in the year. Bitcoin has gotten a bit of a boost from the news of large firms like Tesla and MasterCard showing support for crypto. Just last week, Tesla not only revealed that it had bought $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin, but it also said it will accept the cryptocurrency as payment for its products. MasterCard, on the other hand, has announced plans to open up its network to some cryptocurrencies. PayPal and the Bank of New York Mellon have also made moves to support cryptocurrencies. South Africa plans to share the 1 million AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine doses it received from the Serum Institute of India. Officials there say that the doses will be shared with other African countries. Africa's most industrialized economy suspended the rollout of the AstraZeneca vaccine last week. That decision followed preliminary trial data which showed the jab offered minimal protection against mild and moderate illness from the country's dominant strain of COVID-19. South Africa is now planning to start inoculating healthcare workers with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine as soon as this week. Now, e-commerce was growing at a slow, if steady, pace in South Africa, even before the COVID-19 pandemic hit. But pandemic restrictions have amplified the sector's growth. As Julie Shah now reports, online shopping is not just a convenient option in the country. With the highest COVID-19 caseload on the continent, it's now a growing necessity.
The fashion industry depends on see, feel and buy, but that pattern is being redrawn. Designers now depend on digital sales to keep their businesses going. Online retailer Platform 23 is just over 2 years old, but it wasn't until the COVID-19 lockdown that things took off.
In the beginning of lockdown, when it started last year, March, April, sales were very slow. I think everybody was just concerned about their income and what's going to happen in this weird and unfamiliar territory that we find ourselves in with COVID. And as time passed, I could see sales increasing significantly.
The digital marketplace connects African designers with consumers. Its main focus is fashion, but with income squeezed during the lengthy lockdown, clothes have moved down the shopping list.
We saw the furniture and decor side rise so much because now people aren't going out to restaurants and things so more. They don't have the reason to really get dressed up, but they've been at home working from home and they just can't stand that rug or that couch or that coffee table anymore. And that's what people were replacing instead of the fashion side.
Online shopping breathed new life into industry after a total slump during the hard lockdown.
E-commerce really has opened up the playground to so many other people to give them the opportunity to be online without having the overheads of a big, expensive brick and mortar warehouse.
South Africa's just come through the second wave of infections and vaccines are yet to be rolled out. Online sales are expected to continue growing with the threat of COVID-19 still lingering. Julie Shah, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
From Cape Town to Cairo, Egypt will not be issuing any more Eurobonds for the current fiscal year, which ends at the end of June. The announcement comes days after Cairo sold some $3.75 billion worth of Eurobonds just last week, with part of the proceeds to be used to reduce the country's fiscal deficit. From Cairo, here's Yasser Hakim examining the measures Egypt is taking to minimize its debt profile.
Egypt has been frequently tapping the Eurobond market in the last few years, including the highest bond sale in its history of $5 billion that was raised in August 2020. According to the North African State's central bank, the long-term international bonds are gradually replacing Egyptian pound-dominated treasury bills to avoid crowding out private investors.
Egypt prefers foreign bonds over local bills for several reasons. First, because they have a long-term repayment plan that could stretch 40 years with lower interest rates than the local debt, while the maximum period for treasury securities is only 20 years. Second, it's a confidence-building measure. Success in bond issuances sends a strong message to foreign investors that Egypt is safe to invest in, whether projects or in the stock market.
And the Minister of Finance, Mohammed Maid, confirmed the importance of this borrowing mechanism.
The role of the state is that we manage to solve issues partially through bonds. There was a shortage of hard currency, but we now have hard currency. There was a problem of continuous deficit, but we solved the deficit problem. There were issues with our infrastructure, electricity, roads, transport and gas, but we have managed to solve all of them.
The government says last week's $3.75 billion Eurobond sales to cover part of its $8 billion budget deficit will be the last for this fiscal year 2020-2021 that ends in July.
Minister Mohamed Mait made this decision because Egypt has achieved its target of foreign currency issuances for the year. The state budget has allowed for a $7 billion bond sales, which was covered. The latest $3.75 billion Eurobond sales was oversubscribed, but the government only needed the amount it collected.
Officials are hoping there will be a revival in the tourism industry in the second half of 2021, and that will help to pay the country's next year budget deficit from the tourism revenue rather than from issuing more debt. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
One last story for you in the segment. The European Union says that China became its biggest trading partner last year, vaulting ahead of the United States. Both imports and exports between China and the bloc increased despite the pandemic. European imports from China grew by nearly 6% to more than $460 billion. Exports grew by more than 2% to over $240 billion. Bilateral trade volumes between the United States and the EU declined over the same period.
The figures came in on Monday from Eurostat, the statistical service of EU. They showed both China's exports and imports have been increasing last year, up by 5.6% and 2.2% from respectively. That tallies with China's official numbers, which show bilateral trade grew by over 5% in 2020 to nearly 4,500 billion yuan or nearly 600 billion euros. As far as what's being traded, the EU's mostly purchased industrial and consumer goods, machinery and equipment, footwear and clothing from China, while China mainly bought machinery, motor vehicles, aircraft and chemicals from the EU. Now, a lot of these products are transported by train. The number of China-Europe freight trains has continued to surge, rising by over 50% last year to a total of 12,400. And despite the impact of COVID-19, China overtook the U.S. as EU's largest trading partner in the third quarter last year. The statistics show EU's trade with the U.S. saw substantial decline in both directions, with exports and imports dropping by 8.2% and 13.2% respectively. Now, these results speak for the strong resilience and importance of China-EU ties. That is according to Zhao Min, head of the Chinese mission to the EU. Last year, the two sides wrapped up negotiations on the China-EU bilateral investment treaty. The announcement came 2 days before the end of the year and locked in a deal that had been dragging since 2014 after going through 35 rounds of negotiations. The deal has not been officially signed yet, as legal texts are still being hammered out, but it covers three main areas: market access, fair competition, and sustainable development. China is set to open up sectors including automobiles, air transport, and private hospitals to Europe, while Europe will give Chinese investors more access in renewable energy. Analysts predict the deal will provide tremendous opportunities for both Chinese and European companies, and it will help to ensure a level playing field.
And we'll leave it there for the time being. I'll be back at the top of the hour, though. In Global Business, we'll be talking about Kenya and the IMF. Its last program with a fund that ended in 2013. Now it's back. It's applied for a $2.4 billion loan from the International Monetary Fund. But what exactly will Kenya have to do within that 38-month program as far as tax reform is concerned? We'll explore that and plenty more at the top of the hour. See you then. For now, back to Beatrice.
Rama, thank you. And let's now take a look at your sports news. Here's what's ahead. Defending CAF Champions League winners Al Ahly is set to face Sudan's Al Merreikh.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
They met as gymnasts at a national championship, became friends, fell in love, and today they are married. That's the summary of the story of Michael and Helen Ocheke, two accomplished Nigerian gymnasts who are both helping to promote their sport in the country and achieve a lifelong dream. Here is CGTN's Deji Badmus with their story.
Meet Nigeria's first gymnastics couple. Michael and Helen Ocheke's love story started at the National Gymnastics Championship back in 2004. At the time, Michael was one of the country's top male gymnasts.
I approached her like, wow, you're a good gymnast. I'd like to be your friend. And you know, ladies, they're like, ah. But later, she became my friend.
The relationship developed thereafter, and they would later go on to marry. Michael has since retired as a professional gymnast